meeting back to order again and making the first announcement that, as advertised, we just came from an executive session to discuss real estate. I'm supposed to make an announcement that goes something like this, and I have some people that are going to chime in if I get it wrong. We've decided to not take any...
Well, we haven't decided anything. We're here to decide now in public.
See? There you go.
Thank you, Joe. Keep him straight.
Well, what I meant was we're not going to decide on purchase or sale or anything. We're going to rebid it, and in the meantime, look at repositioning the rates for all the sewer systems in the meantime, and adjust Erica's budget for next year.
Thank you.
What does that mean?
So, to all of you that said we don't listen, trust us, we hear you all the time. And that aqua stunt was probably just that, a stunt, but we'll look into that. Any questions from the audience? Just
What does that repositioning mean?
we're going to
Reassess the rates.
We're gonna look at
reassess.
the rate structure for each plant and build in a reserve probably.
Is there going to be a decision on December 4th then?
No.
Thank you.
No. Yes, Maria?
So does that mean that the rates can go up for the ones that are not, that we're subsidizing right now?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so I thought.
Any other questions on that real quick? Yes, Brian?
This is going to tack right back to the budget.
Make it
There's a timeline on the budget that you've got to post it so much in advance. Do you still have time to do that?
She's got her work cut out for you. If not, we'll have to do whatever that process is to take it up in January, but do you have time?
We would need to have a special meeting at the end of December. If we would wait till December 4th to do the advertisement, you need 20 days to have the budget advertised. So,
We're authorizing the advertisement.
New Year's Eve.
yeah,
Tonight we're gonna authorize the advertisement of the budget.
right,
And we can still do that, correct?
We can. If we're looking at the rate structure, right now, the budget as presented reflects the current rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
John, you had a question?
Yeah, if you look at the rate structure, will the rate structures be specific to each sewage treatment facility?
Yes.
Or, okay, they won't be contingent upon the others?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I have a problem with, since we're operating at a loss, I have a problem with somebody saying the town is subsidizing us, other taxpayers. Well, you know, ours are very high, and I understand we only have 33 homes on the block. But now if our rates go up any further, that'd be not right.
Currently, we transferred $45,000 over last year and this year to cover the deficiency on your sewer
Right.
system.
Why does the deficiency exist? The question was, it was poor design, but wasn't the design approved by the township when the place was built?
Part of it is the developer that built it and the homeowners who did it never contemplated only having 33 homes tied into it, and the cost of running it.
So to break even, that you'd have to raise us, each household, another $1,500 a year, if my math is correct?
I don't want to say it, but yes, a rate increase is probably on the way.
You're gonna chase people out of this township if that happens.
Wouldn't it be prudent to have an efficiency draw, like shouldn't Erica be charged with trying to make everything we have operate more efficiently? And the reason I ask that question is the cost doubled since when we dedicated it to you guys, it was a highly profitable system. And over a 10-year period, the cost went up 105%. All right?
When was this? What year?
In the 2005, we dedicated the system to you.
Okay, I have no history on that, so it was
See what I'm saying, though? I mean, you got to explore all avenues, not just raising rates. Try to get more efficient. You know, get better at what you do. That shouldn't be that. You know, I'm happy to help.
Okay, well,
Another committee member.
Brian,
There you go.
A point of information for the St. Stephen's Green people. I actually looked at the numbers dating back to, I believe it was 2006. And I think it was around 7 years that I looked at. And 6 of the 7 years it ran a deficit. So that the other township, taxpayers have been subsidizing the St. Stephen's Green water and sewer systems since at least 2006 for most of those years. And I found it disturbing that, it was never brought up by the government or the administrations at that time that this was even happening. So we, the rest of us, have been contributing to your sewer and water operating system costs. Just point of information.
Well, I contributed to the town by paying my taxes also.
Yes, sir.
I don't know, the Bucks County.
Excuse me, hold on. If I could, he's trying to speak back there.
The Bucks County Water Sewer Authority seems to be a very efficient entity from the proposals, so maybe, I don't know, maybe they're better than a third party we're currently using, and maybe they would entertain a 5-year contract to be the operator but not the owner. Maybe there's a way, because somewhere in the math, maybe it still doesn't add up, but if someone's willing to operate it for their cost, I'd be willing to give them a 5-year contract.
Yeah, they don't do that, they don't provide those services.
Well, they can do it, maybe another third party can, maybe it's somebody different.
John?
One of the things that we understand as homeowners in Weatherstone is when that facility was turned over, we were paying Hank a rate, and then we paid you a rate. It's unfair to think that you raised the rate so much to understand that the developer generally kept the rates artificially low to attract buyers.
Wait, your rates went up when the township took over?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they doubled.
They did?
Yes.
From $90 to $190 a quarter.
Yes.
But we understood
Not that we
that
watched.
the rates were artificially low, just like our monthly fees were artificially low.
Right.
The other thing is, you might consider inviting a representative from each one of the boards to sit on an ad hoc committee, to at least understand the process, understand the details, so that they feel comfortable and can share back to their residents as the township moves forward.
That's a great idea, actually.
That is a good idea. Thank you, John.
So just a comment, you guys are working hard, I get that. But as someone commented that nobody really said, hey, I'm all for it, and then you guys went out and caucused and came back and said, we're just gonna raise everybody's rates, and then we're gonna look at it. At least that's what I heard. And another citizen here said, there was just a transfer of wealth going on, where we gave you the sewer systems, and then you then monetize the sewer systems. That's a transfer of wealth. It just doesn't square right, but really burned me. And I was going through this, you guys were doing a good job, but someone in your group just said, screw them, we're just gonna raise their rates. That's the way I took it.
You missed part of the discussion earlier when how we got to this point. We were contemplating looking at the rates and raising the rates beforehand, and then we went to the sale idea and held them firm, and because it wouldn't make sense. And not to be argumentative, but how much, when you gave us that, did you have to sign any papers when you gave it, or was it the developer who gave us the system?
It was I believe it was the homeowners association.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Just one very quick one. Are all the ratepayers paying the same rates? And if not, just because they happen to have a less efficient system, I don't think it's fair. It seems like everyone should pay the same rates, and if they're not, that shouldn't be. That's not right. That's not a good way to treat it.
They're not paying all the same rates.
They should be.
If you were one of the higher ones, you would say that. If you were one of the lower ones, you would say something else.
No, I would say the same thing.
Sarah, yes. we've got a-
Just very briefly about the what happens in 5 years, whichever is greater, the municipal rate or the local rate, is that by plant?
Yes.
Or will it be across an average of all of the sewage treatment plants in the township at the time?
Per plant.
Per plant?
One of the biggest things is we're going to really have to look long and hard, because we haven't for the last year and a half or so, is the long-term maintenance cost. For instance, replacing a lagoon, and make sure that we have the dollars in hand.
But we're trying to pass that cost on to somebody else, right?
Well, we were, and we're still
Depends on the rebid.
gonna rebid and see what happens.
John?
Relative to that comment about will you have the money if you have to replace a lagoon down the road? Have there been reserve studies done on each of these facilities so you know what your anticipated replacement costs are over time? And then are those numbers built in for the fees that are being paid?
For you in Lover's Corner, I believe so.
But I'm not sure they're accurate and have been completed
Right.
lately, so that has to be done.
We just did a new reserve study in Weatherstone, which forced us to update our numbers in our yearly budget. So it seems to me that, you know, if you don't have one, you ought to get one done for each facility. If you do have them and they're 7 or 8 years old, you ought to get a new study done.
We will now, John, that's for sure. Okay, anything else? Thank you very much. I know this sounds troubling to you folks. We're up here doing the best we can. Sometimes we get them right, sometimes we get them not so right. But anyway, we always value your opinion, even if we don't agree, if I don't agree with it or he doesn't or whatever. So thank you all for coming. We've got the rest of the agenda to accomplish, so we're going to go right into that, okay?
John, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the information and putting up with us.
Anytime, Jim. On number 7 on the agenda, Historic Resource Committee, presentation of the Brenner Farm site. Is that Harry?
The helms are up.
The helms.
Okay.
Where's the other helm?
I can handle this.
He doesn't need my.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Helm. I'm a representative, a volunteer of the Historic Resources Committee. Harriet's our leader. We're a working group of the EAC. We've been working on a project to have a road sign that for a particular property that's part, no, I'll get it, that's part of a development plan called Eagle Farms. Now, let me point out on the map, then I'll show you the road sign. We're talking about in the yellow zone. It was originally a farm, 157 acres. That's at the point of this square, 157 acres. And now we have a lot of great historic properties in our township, over 200 of them. And so I'm going to make this one special, but I have to say that we have a lot of special properties. But we had the opportunity to fulfill a promise in the development plan. The builder paid for it, which is to create a road sign commemorating this farm. It's kind of not there anymore. And we call it the Binner Farm. And so I just wanted to tell you the 930 version of the Binner Farm history, and then make a presentation of the poster. We call it the Binner Farm because the Binner family lived there for over 150 years in one shape or form or another. Really, Mr. Binner is sort of the American immigrant story. Comes here as a teenager from Germany, and he's in our tax records by 1750 at a young age, so we kind of know when he started paying taxes. What makes the farm kind of unique is he was paying taxes on a stone house in 1750. The Historical Resources Guide suggests that the original part of the house dates back earlier than that as a stone cabin, a stone house. If that's true, it's one of the earliest stone houses in the county, let alone the township. We have a couple others, but this is a very old house. It's still there. That part of the house is still there. So the Binners are an important part of our township history. You see, Henry Binner did fight in the Revolution. He was captured. He was imprisoned. His wife actually bailed him out by giving some coins, some gold coins. And the family legend was that she also sewed gold coins in the vests of her kids, 2 of them who fought in the Revolution for over 5 years. So that's the Binner family. It stayed in the family through the Steitlers and through the DeWeese family. It's been there a long time. It changed hands to the Ewings in the late 1920s. They were great custodians of the farm as well. They owned the farm for nearly 75, 80 years before it becomes the development of today. But unfortunately, the development kind of overtook it. And that's a bit of of the story of the Benner Farm and why the Benners are important to our township history. It was based on this farmscape that the National Historic Registry accepted an application in the late 90s for it to be on their registry. It was never fulfilled. It instead became Eagle Farms subdivision. So it did qualify, but it was never fulfilled. And yet, in the development agreement, the builder agreed we'll pay to have a road sign put up. We don't have road signs for our historic properties. So this is, I think, one of the first historic property road signs. So we took on the mission, Jane and I took on the mission of creating a road sign. We said we want to make it visual. So I said, sure, hey, someone give me some pictures of what it looks like. I contact Annie Ewing. Oh, here's what the barn looks like, and here's what the house looked like. And we couldn't find the actual farm, the whole farmscape, the whole essence of why it was historic to the county. It was actually a hard thing to do. I contacted one of the neighbors, which had lived there a long time, and I said, Rick, what do you got? It's Rick Merrick. He lives right across the street. He says, come on over. I come on over, and he says, there it is. And sure enough, on the wall is a painting, a handmade painting by a famous Chester County artist named Jack Kaiser. A nice, beautiful watercolor. And what we would like to do, Jane and I, and Rick Merrick would like to present a reprint of this watercolor, authorized by the family. Jack has passed away. And as a donation, we'd like to donate this to the township. This is his original watercolor. Beautiful, huh? So I'll leave it for others to look at. And on behalf of us, we'd like to present this piece of art on behalf of the family and Rick and I. And Jay. So we had that to go on. We didn't have permission to use that artwork in the road sign. We hired Ann Bedrick, who's a noted artist of historical properties. Ann did a great job going from that painting and then looking at the property and her knowledge of Chester County barns and what the farmscapes look like. She went on to recreate what it might have looked like when it was wonderful. That would have been the heyday of that farm, probably mid-1800s. And I have that to present to the township. A framed issue, the other one that will come up as a road sign, is going to be placed right across the street from the house, right on Eagle Farms Road. And the artist took the perspective of if you were standing at the sign, looking down, looking up, that's the perspective that she drew it. So that when you're standing there, you can get it. Because if you look at this farm, you have no clue how the farm today, the house, you have no clue how the farm was once in the day. So let me put that up and you can look at it. Hold on.
Are they done with all the renovations, Jim?
Don't open
Don't
that.
go there.
Don't
Don't
go
go
there.
All right.
You're paying for this.
So it's done in a pin and ink style. Down in the bottom right is a view from the other side of the house. But what you're seeing, we know that people stopping by road signs that like something visual. So what you're seeing is exactly from where you're standing, the farmhouse, and then the whole barn. It was one of the magical barns of Chester County at one time before it had a fire. There was a second barn that did get knocked down. At one time, there were huge trees in the backyard. They're not there anymore. All gone to the development. Don't get me started there. But this has recreated it, so we don't forget it. And to the bottom right, in the style of a history book of Chester County called Fusi Cope, is Ann Bedrick's rendition of what it looked like from the other side, from what is the front door, because this farmhouse, like most farmhouse, points south, not north. You're looking at it from northwest here. So anyway, I present, so we don't forget what it might have looked like at one day. The actual farm sign here, framed, and the administration will install this shortly. I'm not sure when. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks, Jim. And that barn that burned down was in the Old Bones movie that was made right there. or Lovely Farms?
Next is
Lovely Farms, sorry.
Resolution 25-2017 prohibiting a Category 4 licensed casino facility.
I move that the board approve resolution 25-2017 prohibiting the category 4 licensed casino facility in Westminster Township.
Second.
Questions from the audience?
What is a Category 4 facility?
It's a big one.
Well, it's hard to do.
It's something less than your normal casino.
Yeah, 400.
It's,
Slot machines.
Is it 400 slot machines?
Yeah, it's a limited number of slot machines and eventually some table games.
So as the numbers get lower, the thing gets bigger?
And yeah, number
Okay.
one's the biggest.
So do we also prohibit 3, 2, and 1?
The new license coming out is 4, and that's your only option to prohibit a casino. The other licenses have already been issued, so the only thing coming out is 4.
They're considering increasing the number of licenses out there.
Okay, so
But
it's
we
not-
have a chance to opt out of it permanently, so we're
Okay,
choosing
good.
to
So it's
opt
not
out.
that somebody's come to us, it's we're just doing this
Correct.
across
For
the board.
future, we're opting
And
out.
for 1, 2, and 3, we can't opt out because that's already done.
An option.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions? I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Nice job.
Okay, we got one right.
Yep. Once in a while, Sean.
It happens every once in a while.
Do we need to do the township budget now?
Yeah, that would be okay with you?
Sure.
All right.
You using the,
Yes, one more presentation. While we have it, I will try to be as succinct as I can. Thank you, Brian.
What'd she say, quick?
she didn't say.
I said succinct, right? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have it. So we have to go with the base stuff. Okay. You and me? Delegate. Get there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good evening. All right. We have here the presentation of the 2018 township budget. So what I'll do is go over the major cost centers and just an overview of how we came to the draft budget this evening, and we'll leave questions for the end, if that's all right. Okay. Thank you. Budget goals, really the primary purpose of the budget is really to set the work plan and tell you what are we doing, how do we set the standard and the policy for moving forward with the township and do that in accordance with the desires and plans of the Board of Supervisors. We look at delivering the primary functions of government and investing in very important projects, roads, bridges, public safety, of course. We're looking at this year $800,000 towards our road and bridge program. And this year, the budget is presented in accordance with our fund balance policy, which we looked at implementing this past year. Okay, we just have here a visual of your real estate tax bill. So you can see the green 6%, that's reflective of the township's contribution for the township's portion. You see our various millages here. Our assessed valuation is going up, which is a positive. The assessed valuation in 2016 was $513,069,360, and we're looking at just over $567,000 here. Okay, in developing the budget, we look at baseline budgets, take a look at exactly what we need as far as operations, and then departments, committees, they will prepare budget requests, and we put that in accordance with what we can do and present that budget to the board, staff, review and analyze that, and come up with the proposed budget. Okay, this goes through our revenue assumptions for the next year. Overall, the transfer taxes have been going up, and that really has to do with the transfer of property and looking at the various developments and homes that are being purchased and that sort of thing. The earned income tax is also, is part of the residents and the dedicated earned income tax, which we have for our open space fund, is also on a positive increase. Continue with that, just going through the various developments. We have the Courts of Chester Springs, Eagle Farms, Brimcoed, which this will be a bit different because we're looking at larger lots with conservation easements, but some building, and the Weatherstone Town Center, which is anticipated. As I reported, a lot of our funds are remaining steady with slight increases, and we do not anticipate any borrowing next year. Okay. I won't go point by point, but I do like to put out there, and this will be available on the township website, what each fund provides. We're delivering service through each fund. So we're looking at, and in doing that, also on the building side, we've seen a lot of activity on pulling permits for, of course, all the developments I spoke of, but just you're seeing people in the township doing a lot of projects. So in seeing that, we have a very busy building department, and that's reflected in those revenues. We also receive revenues through park fees. We have revenue, or we have funds through liquid fuel allocation, through PennDOT for our road program. And we have here, in addition, just talking about certain planning projects, we're budgeting funds towards that, which will help streamline some things as well. And as we mentioned with the sewer system program, the revenues from that currently reflect an increase in rates. So just that is that. We go to anticipated expenditures. Salaries and wages, we have proposed 3% for management. FSME employees and our uniformed police personnel have a 3.5% increase per their police contract. The health insurance renewal was 4% overall for the township this year. That is factored into the budget. We have various items here. General government, I don't need to get into many nuts and bolts, but this is all of the basic needs you have to operate our facilities and deliver primary services. Data processing technology, I have reflected here, engineering services. We're looking at having an increase to the budget. This year's budget, we had a lot of activity, so we were over budget this year in this line item, as well as legal. So we're accounting for that in terms of this year's budget. Okay, thank you. Okay, and as I mentioned, legal expenses, we're looking at doing some work, prioritizing efforts to update our ordinances. That keeps being discussed. If we can find creative ways of seeking a grant, we're working towards that, and that would be wonderful, but we need to get some work done, so we have that planned for next year. We also include our insurance. Our workers' comp is down by 5% because of the implementation of a safety committee this year. So that's a positive. As far as community development, we have a few things with our committees, of course, that active projects, which is reflected here. We're not sure how Griffith Farmhouse is going to play out next year as far as the township potentially looking to sell off that asset. So we have some limited maintenance next year for that. And we also have funds for the Fellowship Trail St. Matthew's Church connection, some work on that to do next year. Okay, thank you. As far as code enforcement and public safety planning, we have our building department expenses and professional services. We do have an emergency operations coordinator, which we contract, we appoint them to the township. And have our fire budget. Our fire budget includes operating a contribution for 3 companies, Kimberton, Ridge, and Ludwig's Corner. This year, Ludwig's Corner, we have a capital contribution budgeted for a rescue vehicle that they're proposing. Well, actually, we've already ordered it, but we're working through that to see if we can help them. As far as planning and zoning, we have our comprehensive plan update underway, and the codification of our ordinances, a very important project. It's a multi-year project, so that carries forward into 2018. Okay, police department expenses overall. We've lots of supplies and equipment to run a department, software licenses, and contracts with local agencies to carry out the department's activities. We do have a replacement police vehicle budgeted, and our animal control contract comes in line with this, and of course, training and professional development for staff. Okay, Public Works Department, again, staff, supplies and materials for the implementation of our road improvement program. We have the French Creek arch replacement, which is, I know, a super high priority. So we're working through those details. We are prioritizing some roads right now for potential paving and double chip seal. As far as the paving, just to mention a few, I know Brian Kolakowski and I and the road crew are working through that, but one of the items, we're looking at Janie Lane to begin some work on that, Schoolhouse Lane, possibly Kimberton, but we're not completely sure yet. We're looking at the numbers, and of course we'd love to do more, but the resources can be limited for sure. So that will be analyzed here so we can get those contracts for the priorities together because of the winter bidding. Liquid Fuel Fund, again, I had mentioned that this year we had $200,000 more because of a reserve from the previous year, so we'll have about half of that. And this also includes our winter maintenance. Okay. And the Open Space Fund is our special revenue fund. We have a lot of activities. This is one of the biggest changes in terms of the budget compared to last year because of the Brincoed acquisition. We are going to be working through that in the negotiations to get that all squared away. And we have the Open Space Maintenance Fund now set up for next year. Okay, thank you. And the sewer fund, we'll see, right? The proprietary fund includes our expenses with the contracted operations, general maintenance of the sewer system in our one water plant. We will be monitoring the progress of this contemplated sewer system sale for sure very closely, and monitoring activity of the Quartz and Chester Springs sewer plant. That should be dedicated in early 2018. Okay. All right, so together, I really think it's very important to make note we have no tax increase. This is not only a balanced budget, but we deliver a budget with a net income. Last year, the net income was just about $69,000, so we're looking at $60,000 as net income this year. We're dedicating funds to some major projects and committing ourselves to service and continuous improvement. We are working on projects, bricks and mortar, and internally here within the township to make the employees trained and doing the best job that they can do, and planning for the future to make sure we're not static and stagnant, and we are planning and investing in making ourselves, all the ordinances more user-friendly and the plan documents current. So, okay, so the proposed budget, our general fund, $4,330,114. You'll see our open space fund is $2.5 million here, and liquid fuels fund is our allocation from PennDOT. Sewer fund includes, that has an increase compared to last year given the Pulte plant as an addition. So you'll see the total of all funds, $7,713,275. Overall, the budget, the general fund, has increased about 5%, and that is dealing with, there is an increase in revenue, there is an increase in expenses, there are certain contract renewals that, are in place that really can bring things up, but I'll tell you the performance of the township, we have a good, strong foundation to do some good work here. So we have this posted now on the website, and we'll certainly take comments and questions and welcome that. Thank you.
I have one question.
Sure.
The budget that you post on the website has all the detail,
Yes.
all the accounts.
Yes, it does. Yes, all the accounts, line item by line item.
Was there an increase in earned income tax by 0.25% to one of the earlier slides?
Right. It's a split between the earned income tax for the general fund and the dedicated earned income tax for the township for open space.
So there's no change in the
No
earned
change.
income tax rate?
Correct, no change.
As a percentage, what are you budgeting for an increase in earned income tax year over year?
Oh, let's see. It's modest. The increase for the earned income tax is modest as compared to our real estate tax increase.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
What
about
percent?
2%.
2%. So the inference would be, that would be the average wage increase in our
Right,
community?
right, or
So
people
my
moving
question would
in.
be then, if it's 2%, why then are we increasing wages 3 and 3.5%?
The wages within the township? Sure, that's perfectly fair. So, as far as the management employees, that is yet to be decided by the Board of Supervisors. That number is not by contract. So, uniformed employees and non-uniformed employees that are NAFSME, by contract, are 3% and 3.5%. Management is budgeted at 3%, that is not set in stone.
So everybody's under a CBA?
Yes,
And-
except for management employees, which is really 3%.
So staff employees are union?
There are some, yes.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian?
Will that slide set also be on the website?
Yes.
Thank you.
And there's a pop quiz later. Brian? John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a budget presentation of my own.
Sure.
This week. You want to go? Now, I used, it's a little bit different because this is what was online, and this is not what you have.
Well, that's the line item by line item budget. I'm just giving a visual aid to tell the story.
Okay.
You want us to give out your handout?
Yes, I'm going to give some of these for you if they want them.
We're standing by to these assistants.
And to the audience.
That's all. Oh, come on, okay.
Okay, there's not, I won't make many comments
Sure.
at this point, but, there's a lot that we could say, or I could take from a different standpoint. One is, I note I have 9 months here actual, and it shows the net income of $1,172,000. That, by the way, is higher than our real estate tax. And so, I'm not saying next year the real estate tax could be 0 and we come out ahead, but, and I noticed last year, there was a number, it varies between 800 and 900,000, but our real estate tax was $1 million then. And so we're close. And and my point is probably more that we should be spending more on our residents, roads, etc., and instead of putting all this aside. Another comment I would have is in the budget, in the one I have, there's $200,000 reserves to road program
Right,
and $45,000 reserved to sewer program.
right.
But I don't think that's a valid accounting method. And when the auditors come in and do an audit of our township, they're going to leave that out. And so instead of showing plus 60, they're going to show minus 180, some other number. And so I mean, I know what your point is, and your point is we're taking money. And you said earlier that we were going to comply with I think the township said the reserve should only be 30% of the tax revenue.
No, sure, you finish, that's fine.
Pardon?
If you want to finish, your question, I could.
I would say they're double that now. And so if you wanted to use those reserves instead of 200,000, it might be 5, 6, 800,000. Some other number that I haven't calculated. But anyway. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any other questions for Erica? George?
The document retention project?
Right, yes. The township, as far as records and maintaining them and making sure we have a digital copy to preserve that and keep them secure, you can imagine it's quite onerous to take all our property files and scan them all into our software system. But we're doing that. There are companies that can handle that for you, and it'll come in, take your documents, put them on a CD, and you have them so that they're protected. So we are investigating that. So that there's a portion of that proposal that we added to the budget this year.
That you envision getting it done in a year?
Oh, it certainly can be done from the company's perspective. Staff is supplementing that as much as we can as well, so.
And would that be something, would you have electronic retrieval for it too?
Correct, yes.
Presumably document,
Right.
so the indexing will happen when you scan it?
Correct, yes, indexing, which is very important for exactly retrieval and having a classification system that we can, have dependent. Yes.
Do you think you can do everything?
We budgeted for one portion right now, looking at, I believe it was the subdivision files right now.
So that would be prints, 8.5 by 11, everything?
Right, everything. Mhm.
Good.
And that's in what line item that you're?
Data processing.
In data processing?
Yes.
Chris, any question?
Yeah, when you first started, there was a confusion about road names, and I brought up, is it possible to change Kimberton Road to Old Kimberton Road?
Right.
Because it's always confused on Google and
Yes.
things. People put in Kimberton Road and 113 comes up.
Mm-hmm. Yes, as far as PennDOT, that's a bit of a battle, I think. to
But that
change that.
isn't, Old Kimberton Road is a
Oh, well, the
township
old
road.
Kimberton, yeah,
You could change it to Old Kimberton from
Sure,
Kimberton.
I mean, that would be something we would have to discuss to make it more, distinguished, right?
Well, yeah, 113, they changed the name of it about 3 times.
Okay,
From
yeah,
401 to Phoenixville.
yeah, he called all, sorts of
Can
things.
historical?
Pike Spring
Can
Road.
you help us with that?
Yeah.
Pike Spring Road.
I call it Old Kimberton anyway.
Right,
We
right.
would have to send in some paperwork.
We'll ask
We
Joe.
have to send it to the mapping companies.
Okay.
Marion?
For the employees that are on the healthcare that are not under contract, what's the contribution rate?
Right now, it's 10%.
They contribute 10% to the, is that the same as it was last year?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Yeah, does that 4% rate increase reflect an actual proposal, or is that just an estimate?
For the
On
health
healthcare.
insurance? Health insurance is actual. Mhm. Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
The next item, with the budget changes that you're going to have to look at, we should still advertise the budget.
Yes, well, we have 20 days to advertise the budget, and then it would be adopted on the second meeting in December. That would be, and you can make changes, it just cannot be a variance of 10% overall.
Right.
So,
You're okay with us making that motion, Jim?
Is it gonna vary 10%?
No.
No.
No?
No.
And that's with,
feel confident where it is right now?
so that's not within each category, that's overall.
Right. There's another, on the second-class township code, within funds, there's a specific requirement, it can't go above a certain amount, but, 10% overall.
Marion?
With the onset of a new board member, you also have the ability to make changes to the budget in January, correct?
A one-time change in January, yes. Chris?
I've wondered for years whether it was possible to have some sort of provision within decisions that a township makes as to whether they extrapolate forward to look and see what the costs are. And the reason I say that is 30 years ago, everything that's on this didn't even exist. And it now exists, or maybe some road stuff. But it's like the dripping in the bathtub, it fills it up. Over time, the costs of retirement, the cost of workman's comp, the cost of buildings, the cost of all these things is always increasing.